You don't work here anymore, Lydia. I looked up from the workbench, sandpaper still in my hand, dust caked into the creases of my knuckles. Mateo stood in the doorway of the shop our father built with his own hands, holding a manila folder like it was a weapon. Excuse me? You heard me. He walked in like he owned the place. Technically, in his head, he already did. I filed the transfer this morning. The shop's mine now. I set the sandpaper down slow, because if I moved fast, I was going to throw something. Dad left this place to both of us, 50-50. You know that. Things changed. He dropped the folder on the counter my father had built out of reclaimed oak, the same counter George Simpson used to lean on every morning with his coffee, telling me stories about the first chair he ever restored. Read it yourself. I opened it, a transfer of ownership form, my father's signature at the bottom dated 3 weeks before he died, 3 weeks when he was in a hospital bed on a ventilator, barely able to hold a spoon, let alone a pen. He couldn't even sign his own name in the hospital, I said. You expect me to believe he drove down to a notary? Mateo shrugged. Mobile notary. It's all documented. By who? He smiled, and that's when I knew. Not suspected, knew. That smile was the same one he wore at 9 years old after he broke my bike and told our stepmother I'd left it out in the rain. He said, Adeline handled the details. Of course she did. His wife had a way of handling details that always seemed to end with something in her name. Get out of my shop, I said. It's not your shop. That's kind of the point I'm making. I grabbed my phone off the workbench and started recording. He didn't even flinch, just adjusted his jacket like he was posing for it. Say that again, on camera this time. The shop belongs to me and Adeline now. You're welcome to collect your personal tools by Friday. He walked out the way he came in, unhurried, like a man who'd already won. I stood there in the dust and sawdust of a room that smelled like my father, like linseed oil and cedar shavings, and I felt something in my chest go quiet and cold in a way that scared me more than anger ever could. I called Brandon first. He picked up on the second ring. He was just here, I said. Mateo, he's got a transfer form with Dad's signature on it. Says the shop's his. That's not possible. Your dad couldn't sign anything the last month he was alive. I know. Lydia, you need to call Rose. Rose Duncan had been our father's lawyer for 11 years. If anyone would know whether that signature was real, it was her. She picked up before I finished dialing in my head, like she already knew this call was coming. Send me a photo of that signature right now, she said. No hello, no small talk. Rose didn't do small talk when something smelled like fraud. I photographed the page and sent it. 30 seconds later, she called back. Lydia, I need you to sit down. I'm not sitting down, Rose. Tell me. I pulled your father's medical records last year when we did his estate planning just as a precaution. I still have the hospital admission timeline on file. A pause, papers shuffling on her end. Your father was intubated on the date this form says he signed it. He was not conscious. He could not have signed anything. The floor didn't move, but it felt like it did. So it's forged, I said. It's forged, Rose confirmed, and under Georgia law, that's not just fraud. If Mateo or Adeline notarized or filed it, mailing it was false, that's forgery in the first degree, felony. We're talking real prison time, not a slap on the wrist. I looked around the shop, at the half-finished rocking chair my father had started before he got sick, still sitting on its side on the workbench, waiting for him to come back and finish it. He never was going to sign that shop away, not to Mateo, not to anyone. Rose, I said, I want everything, every record, every filing, every name that touched this paperwork. You sure? Once we pull this thread, it doesn't stop unraveling. I picked the rocking chair back up and set it upright on the bench, running my thumb along the unfinished armrest. Pull it, I said. That night, going through my father's old files boxed up in the shop's back office, I found something that made my stomach drop harder than the fake signature ever did. A second folder. Adeline's name on 3 other documents I'd never seen before, dated months before my father even got sick. She'd been planning this a long time before he was ever in a hospital bed.
This isn't just fraud, Lydia. This is premeditated. Rose Duncan slid 3 documents across her desk, each one stamped with a date that made my hands go cold. Her office was on the 2nd floor of a converted rice mill near the Savannah River, all exposed brick and ceiling fans that never quite kept up with the heat. "Read the dates," she said. I did. February, April, June, all from the year before my father's diagnosis. "An LLC formation filing," Rose said, tapping the first page. "Adeline Taylor listed as managing member. A commercial lease application, same address as your father's shop. And this one," she pushed the 3rd page closer. "A business valuation report. Somebody paid an appraiser to estimate what your father's shop was worth over a year before he got sick." My throat tightened. She was planning to take it before we even knew he was dying? It looks that way. The door swung open before Rose could say more, and my sister Aria walked in, keys still in her hand, out of breath like she'd run from the parking lot. "I got here as fast as I could. Brandon called me. Tell me this isn't real." "It's real," I said, sliding the papers toward her. "Adeline's been building this for over a year." Aria's face went through about 4 different emotions in the span of 5 seconds: confusion, disbelief, and finally something that looked a lot like the same cold fury I'd been carrying since yesterday. "Mateo let her do this to Dad," Aria said quietly. "While he was dying?" "Mateo probably didn't just let her," Rose said. "In Georgia, if he had knowledge of a forged instrument and used it to gain property, he's a party to the crime under the same statute. Doesn't matter who held the pen." I sat down across from Rose, my legs suddenly not interested in holding me up. What do we do? "First, we don't tip them off. Right now, they think you're scared and outmatched. That's an advantage. Second, I want to subpoena the notary listed on the transfer form. If that notary actually stamped a document for an unconscious man, their license is finished and they'll talk fast to save themselves." "And if the notary never actually was in the room?" I asked. Rose's expression didn't change, but her voice dropped a register. "Then it's not just forgery anymore. It's a conspiracy to commit forgery, and everyone who signed off on it goes down together." Aria reached over and gripped my hand on the table. "We're doing this all the way." "All the way," I said. Rose made a call right there in front of us, calm and businesslike, requesting records from the notary's bonding company. While she talked, I stared at that appraisal report again, the number circled in pen at the bottom. $310,000. That's what my father's life's work, 40 years of restoring other people's broken furniture, was worth to Adeline. A number on a page. When Rose hung up, she looked between me and Aria. "The bonding company confirmed the notary's stamp was used on your father's file. But get this, the notary in question retired 18 months ago, moved to Florida, hasn't notarized a single document since." The room went quiet. "So whoever stamped that page," I said slowly, "wasn't a licensed notary at all. Which means the whole document is void the second a judge sees it. But it also means somebody got their hands on a retired notary's old stamp. That's not something you stumble into. That takes planning and probably money." Aria looked at me. "Adeline's family owns a print shop downtown." I felt something settle into place, heavy and sick. "You think they made the stamp?" "You think," Rose said carefully, "that we need to find out exactly who in that print shop touched this job, because right now, Lydia, it's not just your brother and his wife. It's starting to look like it might be bigger than the 2 of them." My phone buzzed on the table, a text from an unknown number. "Heard you're digging around. Careful what you find. Some things are better left buried, like Dad." I turned the screen toward Rose and Aria. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. "Someone just threatened you," Aria said. Rose's jaw tightened. "That's not a threat. That's a confession they don't know they just gave us." "Who sent you that text?" Brandon paced my kitchen, phone in hand, the threat still glowing on my screen from the night before. We'd relocated to my house on the outskirts of Savannah, the shop feeling too exposed after Rose's warning. "I don't know," I said. "Unknown number, no name." "But you have an idea?" I did. Adeline's brother works nights at the print shop. If anyone knew how to reproduce a notary stamp, it'd be someone with access to embossing equipment. Brandon stopped pacing. "So you go to the shop?" "We don't do anything without Rose," I said. "She said not to tip them off." "They already know we're digging, Lydia. That text proved it." He wasn't wrong. I grabbed my keys anyway. The print shop sat wedged between a laundromat and a nail salon on a strip of road just outside downtown, fluorescent lights buzzing behind glass windows plastered with faded wedding invitation samples. Through the glass, I could see a young guy behind the counter, maybe mid-20s, restocking paper trays. "That's him, George Whitfield, Adeline's brother." Brandon frowned. "Wait, George? Like your dad's name?" "Coincidence, or Adeline thought it was funny." My stomach turned at the thought. We walked in together. George looked up, and something in his face shifted the second he recognized me, a flicker of guilt he tried to bury fast under customer service politeness. "Can I help you?" "You can start," I said, setting the phone on the counter with the threatening text still open, "by telling me why your sister's husband is walking around with a stamp from a notary who hasn't worked in 18 months. His face went white. I don't know what you're talking about." "George," I kept my voice level even though my hands weren't steady, "I'm not here to ruin your life. I'm here because somebody forged my dying father's signature to steal his business, and I think you helped make that possible." He glanced toward the back room, like he was checking if someone else was listening. Then he leaned in, voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I didn't know what it was for. Mateo said it was for a real estate closing, said the guy just needed his old stamp recreated because his equipment broke. He paid me $400. I didn't ask questions I should have." "Would you say that to a lawyer?" Brandon asked. His throat worked. "If it keeps me out of prison, I'll say it to a judge." That's when the bell over the door jingled and Adeline walked in. She stopped cold when she saw us, her expression sliding from confusion to fury in half a second. "George, what did you tell them?" "Nothing," George stammered, but it was too late and we both knew it. Adeline turned on me, all polished manicure and designer bag, the same woman who used to bring store-bought pie to Thanksgiving and call it homemade. "You have no idea what you're doing. You're going to ruin this family. You forged a dying man's signature. You ruined it the day you did that. Your father was going to leave everything to you anyway. Mateo got nothing his whole life. I was just evening things out." There it was. The confession, plain and ugly, no lawyer in the room to stop her mouth. "Say that again," I said, and this time I already had my phone recording, angled just enough that she hadn't noticed. "I said Mateo deserved—" She caught herself, eyes dropping to my phone, her face drained of color. "Turn that off." Too late. She lunged for my phone, and Brandon stepped between us fast enough that she stumbled back into a display rack, business cards scattering across the tile floor. "Get out," George said suddenly, surprising all of us, his voice shaking but firm. "Both of you, get out of my shop." Adeline glared at her own brother like he'd betrayed her, which, in that moment, he had. We left before things escalated further, my hands trembling around the steering wheel as I pulled out of the lot. That's admissible, right? A recorded confession? I don't know. That's for Rose to figure out. I glanced at him. But George, he's scared enough to talk. If he flips, this whole thing falls apart for them. My phone rang before I could say anything else. Rose's name on the screen. "Lydia," she said, her voice tighter than I'd ever heard it. "I need you to come to my office right now." "What happened?" "The notary I told you about, the one who retired to Florida." A pause. "She just called me. She wants to talk. And Lydia, she says this isn't the first time Adeline's used her name."
"How many times?"
The woman on the speakerphone in Rose's office had a voice that shook with something between fear and relief, the sound of someone who'd been carrying a secret too long and finally set it down. 3, she said. 3 that I know of. My name and stamp used without my knowledge on documents I never signed. I found out about your father's case by accident. A former colleague mentioned it at a conference last month. That's when I started looking. Her name was Nadine Ferris, retired notary, living in Tallahassee, a woman who'd built a spotless 30-year record before someone decided her old stamp was still useful. Miss Ferris, Rose said, would you be willing to give a sworn statement? I already drafted one, Nadine said. I want my name back. Whoever's doing this needs to answer for it. Rose glanced at me across the desk, and for the first time since this started, I saw something like hope in her expression. This changes everything, she said, after the call ended. This isn't isolated. If Adeline's done this before with other victims, we're not just talking about a family dispute anymore. We're talking about a pattern of fraud, which under Georgia law can elevate this to a RICO predicate, racketeering. That's federal territory, Lydia. Federal, I repeated. The word didn't feel real. It means the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit could get involved instead of just the local DA. It means real consequences, prison, restitution, not a settlement over coffee. My phone buzzed. Aria. Mom is here. She wants to talk. She says it's urgent. I hadn't spoken to our mother, Rose Duncan aside, no relation, just a coincidence of names, in nearly 2 years, not since she'd sided with Mateo after our father's funeral, calling my grief excessive for a man who'd left me the better half of everything. I drove to Aria's house with my stomach in knots. My mother was sitting stiffly on Aria's couch when I walked in, her purse in her lap like she might need to make a quick exit. She looked older than I remembered, tired. Lydia, she said, I need to tell you something before this goes any further. I'm listening. Mateo came to me 2 weeks ago, before you found out about the transfer. He told me what he and Adeline were planning. He asked me to sign something too, a statement saying your father told me, verbally, that he wanted the shop to go to Mateo alone. The room went very still. Did you sign it? I asked. She hesitated too long. I told him no. I told him it was wrong. But you didn't call me. You didn't warn me. I didn't think he'd actually go through with it without me. He didn't need you. He had Adeline and a stolen stamp and a brother-in-law dumb enough to help her use it. My mother flinched. I know I failed you. I know I chose the easier child too many times, but I'm telling you now because Mateo called me an hour ago. He's panicking. He knows George talked to you. He's saying he wants to move the money out of the business account before the lawsuit freezes anything. Rose, still on speakerphone from the car ride over, cut in immediately. What account? How much? The shop's operating account, my mother said. He transferred himself as a signer months ago. I don't know the number, but Adeline mentioned it was over 100,000, savings your father kept separate for the shop's expansion. I closed my eyes. That expansion fund. My father had shown it to me once, told me it was for the day I wanted to open a second location. He'd been so proud of that number. Rose, I said, can we freeze it before he moves it? I can file an emergency motion within the hour if we hurry, but I need you at my office right now, and I need everything. Every document, every recording, Nadine's statement, George's admission, all of it, today. We're on our way, I said. As I hung up, my mother reached out and grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly firm. Lydia, whatever happens to Mateo, I'm not asking you to protect him. Good, I said, because I wasn't going to. I pulled my wrist free and walked toward the door, Aria already grabbing her keys behind me. Halfway to the car, my phone buzzed one more time, a text from Mateo himself, the first he'd sent me in years. "You have no idea what you just started. Adeline's already talking to a lawyer of her own, and she's not planning to go down alone." Arya read it over my shoulder, her face hardening. "What does that mean?" she asked. I stared at the screen, my pulse loud in my ears. "I think," I said slowly, "it means Adeline's about to turn on Mateo to save herself."
"I want immunity," Adeline said, "and then I'll tell you everything." She sat across from an assistant district attorney named Priya O'Coffer in a conference room downtown, 3 days after her lawyer reached out to Rose directly. I wasn't in the room. Rose relayed it all to me afterward, sitting in her office with a cup of coffee going cold between us. "She flipped," Rose said, "completely, gave a full statement, the forged signature, the fake notary stamp, the print shop, all of it. She says it was Mateo's idea from the start, says he'd been furious for years that your father left the business 50-50 instead of giving him controlling interest." "And the other notary victims?" Nadine said there were others. Adeline admitted to 2 more cases, both real estate related, nothing to do with your family. Separate fraud charges, separate victims. This wasn't a one-time scheme. It was a pattern she'd run before and figured she could run again. I thought about that appraisal report from over a year ago, the numbers circled in pen. All that planning, long before my father ever got sick. "What happens to Mateo?" I asked. With Adeline's statement, plus George's admission, plus Nadine's sworn testimony, plus your recording from the print shop, the DA's office is charging him with forgery in the first degree and conspiracy to commit theft by deception. Adeline's cooperating in exchange for a reduced charge, but she's not walking away clean either. Restitution, probation, and she'll never notarize or hold a business license in this state again. I sat with that for a moment. Somewhere in my chest, I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired and a little sad, in a way I hadn't let myself feel since the day Mateo walked into my shop like he already owned it. "What happens to the money?" I asked. "The expansion fund." "Frozen before he can move it, every cent. It goes back into the business account by court order effective this week." 2 weeks later, I stood in the shop with Arya and Brandon, the late afternoon sun cutting gold lines across the floor my father had swept 1,000 times. The rocking chair he never finished sat exactly where I'd left it, and this time I picked up his tools instead of mine. "You don't have to do that today," Arya said. "I want to. He deserves it to be finished by someone who actually loved him." My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, of all people. "I'm proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago about a lot of things." I didn't reply right away. Some bridges don't get rebuilt just because someone finally admits they burned them. A month after that, the sentencing hearing took place in a Chatham County courtroom. Mateo got 4 years, with a mandatory minimum before parole eligibility, plus restitution on top of what had already been returned. Adeline received 18 months and 5 years probation, her notary victims in Florida and Georgia both receiving settlements from a fraud recovery fund the DA's office coordinated once the racketeering pattern came to light. George Whitfield, the brother who'd made the stamp without asking the right questions, testified against both of them in exchange for community service and a clean record. Last I heard, he'd quit the print shop and started an apprenticeship somewhere that had nothing to do with paper or ink. I finished my father's rocking chair on a Sunday in late autumn, sanding the last curve of the armrest until it was smooth under my palm. I set it by the front window of the shop, where customers could see it the moment they walked in. Not for sale, just a reminder of what the place was actually built on. Arya asked me once if I regretted how far I'd taken it, the lawsuit, the freeze, the courtroom, the family that would never look the same again. I told her, no, not once. because my father spent 40 years building something with his hands, piece by piece, patient and careful, believing that things done right would last. I wasn't going to let two people with a stolen stamp decide that story ended any differently than it should have. My name is Lydia Simpson, and I didn't just save my father's shop. I finished what he started.